How's it going, everybody? My name is Artorigold, and today I want to talk about Doomfist. Now, Doomfist is getting a lot of changes, and last video I talked about some of the things that are going to be on the PTR Monday for Brig, and with that, we also saw some changes with Doomfist that are going to be on Monday as well on the PTR. So, I'm going to go ahead and just jump right into what has happened to Doomfist and how this is going to affect him and how this will affect the meta at the lower level and at the top level. So, what they did to Doomfist's E, or his Seismic Slam, is that victims no longer lose air control when they're getting pulled in. Also, one of the things that happened on the PTR earlier, so whenever you use your E on an enemy, they kind of get sucked towards the center and get towards you, which is an interesting change that they added, and it made it so that, like, basically if they're all grouped up, you can then just follow up with your uppercut and hit all of them into the air much easier because they kind of get, like, sucked in, kind of like an Orisa right click, right? And I like that change. That makes it very easy for him to get multiple enemies with an E then uppercut, which means that you can also get a lot more shields and be a lot more tanky, and then you can choose to either stay and fight after you do that damage to all of them, or just escape with your rocket punch, depending on whatever your cooldown status or health status is after that. So I think that's a really cool change that the E is like sucking people in, but ultimately the change that's being added right now is that when you do E on people and they get knocked up into the air a little bit, they're no longer going to lose like the air control, meaning that they might get sucked in still, but they're going to be able to control their character and do some things that they normally wouldn't be able to do, which could also include some abilities, right? You could probably be like a Hanzo. If you get a Hanzo in there, he should be able to move out of the way and then be able to use his jump or his little, his dash and be able to get out of the E so he's able to dodge the uppercut in time. So this is just kind of a decent change. It's not really like a big one. I think it's mostly just to make it feel a little bit better for people on the receiving end, and I don't think it's overall going to be a big nerf to Doomfist with the E, so I don't think that's too huge. I don't think that's going to affect Doomfist, but I do think that being able to suck people into the center with the E is going to be huge when you go on multiple targets at once. Then you immediately go into an uppercut on 3 people, just a lot of damage, and at the same time, you're going to get a ton of shields from it too. And ult charge too. I mean, that's really good for Doomfist. If anything, that's a big change. Next up, though, we have his ultimate Meteor Strike, which they did a lot with, so I'm going to kind of go over that really quickly. The inner ring damage radius was increased from 1.5 to 2 meters. This is the ring where the Meteor Strike deals its full 300 damage, and then they made the max damage outside of the inner ring decreased from 300 to 200. This is the ring where the damage fall off happens, which still reduces the damage down to 15 at max range. So that's pretty much word for word. So what does that really mean? Well, when you use a Doomfist ult, there's 2 rings, the inner ring and the outer ring. And the way it was before is if you use that on a character like Zenyatta or Ana, someone that doesn't really have any mobility moves, and you're able to place that perfectly on them, it's really not that difficult, it's gonna one-shot them. It doesn't matter where you put that ult, like at all. It's going to be able to one-shot a Zen or an Ana pretty much every time. A lot of characters have ways to block it. I mean, there's shield characters like Brig can just hold down right-click and block the damage. Same thing with Reinhardt and barriers in general. But basically, the only thing that you could do is just kind of try to juke him, but it's really difficult to juke a Doomfist ult, right? It moves pretty quickly, it has a long duration. So really, it's not like a lot of ways for a character like Zenyatta or for Ana to really survive that ultimate ability. So what this means is if you're in the inner ring of the ult, you're pretty much dead. Every single time inside that inner ring, it's going to be 300 full damage, and you're going to just die unless there's somebody like a Zarya who can bubble you, which is primarily the only thing that's kept the Zenyatas and Anas alive in those situations anyways. They basically have to beg for either like a Brig E, which might save them depending on what their radius is, or a Zarya bubble, and that's pretty much the only thing they could do. But now there's a little bit more potential. You might be able to survive a Doomfist ult where normally you wouldn't have. So these are some interesting changes. So it's going to be a lot larger radius of the inner ring, but the outer ring is going to do next to, well, not nothing, but I mean, yeah, they got like 100 damage nerf. That's pretty hard to deal with. I mean, if they're right on the edge of the outer ring of that Meteor Strike, it's just going to be bad. It's kind of devastating. Like, it's not going to do much, and it's pretty easy to get away with that and still live and be able to heal up right after. So I think ultimately what they're trying to do with Doomfist, and the developers I believe even said this in the notes themselves, is they're really just looking at ways that the enemy is able to fight back against Doomfist a little more. I know I might sound a little bit biased, but I'm a huge Zenyatta player. He's my favorite character in the game. I love Zenyatta. I have the most time on him, and he just kind of gets stomped on by Doomfist. If you're Zenyatta against Doom, what do? You just either play really so far back where you're just unable to get reached on by Doomfist, or you switch. And what do you switch to? You're forced to play like Brig or Lucio, right? And even Lucio has a rough time with Doomfist occasionally, but mostly you're just gonna go Brig and try to hard counter the Doomfist with the stun. But you don't always like that, right? Is it really a good feeling where you just have to swap right off your main character just because one character just hard counters you so badly you have to swap? Well, that's what it is. That's what you have to do. If you want to win the game, you have to do that. You're adjusting to the gameplay style. So because of that, I haven't really played a whole lot of Zenyatta as much as I used to. Also, they nerfed Zenyatta and gave him like 15% less projectile speed on his right click. Why did they do that? I don't really remember why. They should probably give him that back because Zenyatta's in a really bad spot right now. Anyways, that's a video for another day. What I want to get back on track and say is that Doomfist has all of his abilities which take control away from the person on the receiving end, and that sucks. That's not really a fun feeling, and there's not really any way to outplay it. I mean, if you're playing against a low SR Doomfist, you could probably outplay him, but if you're playing against top 500 Doomfist, which I normally do, it's just awful. Like, they are able to do everything in their power to make sure that they kill you, and you're not able to do anything back to them. The amount of damage and speed and low cooldowns and health that they have, it's just ridiculous. And as soon as you hit by one ability, you're immediately able to get hit by every single other ability, which just means that you're gonna die every single time. And you have to depend on your teammates in order to keep you alive. The only way to really truly live against a Doomfist in his current state is to get support from your teammates. That's the only way that it's able to happen, unless you're so far out of position away from everything that's happening in the team fight to where you're not able to be affected by Doomfist at all. And that's really the only thing that you can do. So basically, what does this mean overall for Doomfist? Well, it just means that the characters that are really hard countered by Doomfist, or rather characters that aren't able to do anything at all when they see a Doomfist coming in, they're able to have some potential outplay here, and I think that's really good. I don't think Doomfist is gonna be dead. I mean, clearly he still deals a lot of damage, so this isn't really gonna stop Doomfist or his power. This is just making it so other people who were completely just hard countered and unable to do anything, such as Zenyatta and Ana, are now able to survive or maybe outplay the Doomfist. And by outplay, I mean just not get one-shot by a Doomfist ult, because that's really all that happened here. Is they made it so the Doomfist ult isn't going to one-shot you on the outer ring anymore. Now you pretty much have to do it on the inner ring. So there's a lot of ways for the Zenyatta or Ana to maybe move around pillars or to plan wherever they move to a way where they could juke the Doomfist and kind of trick him and make it so that he misses his ult and they get to survive. That doesn't mean that Doomfist isn't going to still do a little bit of damage with the ring and then get like 75 shields on depending on how many people he hits, and then he's able to just use his cooldowns and finish the kill up anyways. But it does give Zenyatta and Ana that chance to where they can live a little bit and maybe outplay it, avoid it, dodge it, not necessarily kill the Doomfist, but just survive the one-shot. That's all it really does. You can still one-shot them with everything else. I mean, the slam, the uppercut, and the punch are still gonna be a guaranteed kill unless they get like a Zarya bubble, or somehow you miraculously get a sleep dart on Doomfist, which is hard to do as an Ana, by the way. So really, I don't think this is gonna be something that Doomfist players should really complain about, but I don't know, maybe I'm biased. Tell me if you think otherwise. I think that Doomfist is really just so strong that other characters have such a hard time playing against him, especially against really good Doomfist. Trust me, I've played against Dante and Hydration on Doomfist, and it is a nightmare. I mean, there's almost nothing you can do. You're pretty much forced to go some sort of counter comp, right? You're basically entirely forced to switch the comp to deal with them, which is kind of annoying to do. Basically, as soon as that happens, we're immediately going to have to swap to a Brig or a Sombra, and then completely hack and stun and flashbang McCree, and then that's basically what we're gonna have to do. You go to that Brig McCree thing. Now, another thing that people might think about is the Graviton combo. One thing that Doomfist has always been pretty good at is that his ultimate is really strong with Graviton, and this is not going to be a nerf to that because his inner ring is still going to do 300 damage, which is what it normally is. The full amount of damage of it is 300. If you're still looking to do the combo on a Grav, you have nothing to worry about. That's still going to be able to kill everybody in there, except for people like tanks, but I mean, any squishy in there is going to die to it. So overall, I don't think these changes are going to be completely weak to Doomfist. It really is more just a change or buff to the people that Doomfist affects really hard, such as Zenyatta and Ana. Me personally, I'm I'm a little biased. I play Zenyatta a lot, so I'm really happy to see that maybe Zenyatta will be able to float around the corner and maybe survive the ult. That would be huge. I would enjoy that. And looking forward to things like this, I think that's something that the devs are overall looking very carefully at the amount of crowd control abilities that are happening, and they're trying to reduce the effectiveness of them. And let's be honest, Doomfist has a lot of it. I mean, every single one of his abilities has some way to take control of the character away from you. So yeah, I fully welcome that. I think that's a really good change, and I'm really happy to see that the devs are finally listening to us and that we're definitely starting to reduce the amount of CC. I don't think CC should be removed completely, but I do think we should limit how much there is, or else it'll just be too overwhelming. Anyways, that's all I have to talk about with these changes. We should see them on the PTR Monday, where I can go over, play them firsthand, and see just how much it actually affects. Anyways, that's all I have for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.